For me, the big thing is really to go into it saying, what is my strategy? What is my goal for this event? Too many people go into the conference thinking, oh, I should just do this big promotion. And it's like, wait, no, take a step back. What is your goal? Is it to get a bunch of customers? Is it to attract investors? Is it to get media coverage? Is it to just interact with your current existing customers? Is it to work with partners, right? Like all of these are different strategies that an organization could take at a conference. And you have to understand, okay, which of those do you want to take? And then once you understand that, then you can apply the specific strategies. Because if I'm going after new people, well, then I can't just curate my existing list hoping that they come. Sure, I could reach out to some prospects. Maybe I make that effort, right? And work with my sales team and say, hey, what could we do at the booth that would attract the prospects that you're working with? Because we want to drive new business that way, right? So I'd say that's where it all starts, is saying, what am I trying to accomplish? Do I just want to be visible at the conference so that investors are like, man, what is this company doing? I need to go talk with them. So start with that. Start with saying, what is my goal? And you may have multiple. You may want to do partners and new customers or something like that. And then once you have that, then you can execute those strategies.
First of all, kudos to anybody who managed to get a speaking session or a presentation at a conference, because it's not easy. The selection committees are getting much more selective. So kudos to anyone who does this, but it is totally worth it, right? Because when you are able to get up on stage, preferably with a customer or a client, then you will stand out because people will see you, right? In the agenda, it'll be on the program. But there are very large programs out there. There are lots of sessions to choose from. So when you get that session approved, your work just starts at that point, right? You have to really promote it. You have to share it with your email list. So I would definitely be emailing all your people in your list to say, hey, we've got this presentation at this conference, this time, this day, please show up. I'd be posting it on social media, that kind of thing. I'd definitely be highlighting it in the app for the conference itself. But then the day of, while you're at that session, I would try to capture it. And what I mean by that is, post snippets during the conference. In the old days, this would be tweets, right? You tweet out, comments and interesting parts of the presentation while you're in the presentation. Create a post on LinkedIn, post pictures on Instagram. All those kinds of things can really highlight and extend the value of the session beyond just the 1 hour that it was running. And then, of course, at the end of all of that, after the conference is over, take everything that you've just posted and then write a summary and put it on your own blog, or maybe pitch that to a media outlet for them to post. It's a nice little summary of the event with pictures and some of these posts. That's how you can really extend the value of the session that you managed to get approved. And that will help you stand out, because people will look back and go, oh yeah, that was a great session. Or if they weren't able to be there, at least they got that summary from you. So I think those are really great ways to take the value of a speaking session, which in itself is a great way to stand out, but then to really move the value or extend the value way beyond the conference itself.
When you look at video, you have to think before, during, and after, right? So before the event, you can do some really authentic, just simple camera ones too, right? That just says, hey, I'm so excited for the event. I can't wait to do XYZ. People like that, right? Because they're like, oh, I didn't think about XYZ, right? Like that session or that person that's speaking or whatever it might be, right? Or that event that's going on. So I think people like to see that, and they like to see that energy. And if especially if you have someone that has that energy, I think those pre-event videos that's, say, hey, I'm on the road, I'm headed to, of Las Vegas for that event, right? I think those add a lot and can really generate some hype and be like, oh, I want to go hang out with that person, right? Like that. This is the kind of energy I want at an event. Let me spend time with them. Or if you help them discover something about the event that they didn't realize, there's a lot of value there too. Now, of course, you don't want to be too promotional, right? Like, sure, if you're doing something at your booth that's valuable for them to come by, or you're gonna have the what's the Chicago popcorn, right? That everyone wants, like you can let them know because then they'll stop by, right? That's fine. But so that's kind of before. During the event, I think you have to be careful what you share during the event because people are so tied up during the event that they may or may not watch it. Now, there's some people that are just watching the social streams, that couldn't make it to the event, and they're like, hey, what's going on? Tell me. So I think you can provide some real-time content to the people that aren't at the event. But I'd say the most powerful thing we've seen, at Healthcare IT Today really goes back to we have all of these amazing people in one place, whether that's customers or whether that's thought leaders or experts that are all in the same place. That is a perfect time to capture a video of them, talking about the trends of the industry, talking about the topics that matter to your customers, to your clients. And so that is a beautiful time to capture the video at the event, and then you share that video after the event. So, I think that's the power of video is, hey, we're all together. Of course, capture that, behind the camera screen grab that says, hey, this is coming. I think people like that anticipation. And, you can kind of rub shoulders, elbows with influencers, that, hey, they came to our booth, check it out, they're talking with us, you're going to want to see this content, right? I think that's cool. But then you wait till after the event to share that content, and it can have a really long life, especially if you record it in a way that's very evergreen, as far as, hey, this content really matters. It's not just, hey, what did you hear at the event that was interesting? It's like that has a shorter life. But if you say, hey, what is the macro trend that's going to impact healthcare for the next year, right? Then now that content could be used for a long time after. So I think that's the beautiful part. Now, I think how you execute it, you have to be careful not to make it a sales pitch of your executive. Nobody wants to watch that, right? It really needs to be thought leadership content, mix in some influencers, some customers, which, by the way, customer is the ultimate influencer if you think about it, right? Like a customer that trusts your product and solution, has seen value. That's like the original influencer is the customer.
There are a lot of ways that companies try to promote themselves that end up not being very effective. I've probably made a few of these mistakes myself too in the early days, so I'm not immune to this. The one that's very common is that I see that really provides almost no value is that shot that people take of themselves standing in front of their booth saying, hey, we're here, come by and see us. One, because they only post it once. And second of all, it's the most boring picture you can imagine, right? Like it's you standing in front of your own booth, waving at the camera, smiling. That's not an exciting shot, right? And there's so many of them that you basically, as an attendee, you ignore them anyway, right? Because nowadays, people already look at the exhibitor list and go, these are the people I'm going to see. Like most of the time, people are not just sort of browsing, walking by. And if that's the only time you're informing someone that you're there, you've already lost. Like as John said before, you should have been promoting yourself that you're being at this conference well before the conference to your list on social, whatever. So by the time it arrives, you don't have to tell people, hey, I'm here. You've already done that. So that's one tactic that I see used all the time that provides almost no value other than to prove to your boss, I guess, that you were there. And that you and if you aren't a marketer, to prove to the marketing team that you set up the booth properly. So that's one. The other mistake, and I've made this mistake, is designing your booth or using the wrong style of booth for the conference. And what I mean by that is a lot of times people will have a ton of copy on their booth, designing it for, hey, when someone stops by, they can spend time reading it. Well, that doesn't happen very often in an exhibit. Like, how many times do you have someone standing there who isn't already talking to you, who has time to read the stuff on your booth? The answer is not very often at all. And yet there are tons of booths designed this way. So if you're at a small booth and you're at the back of the hall, you need something big, bright, bold in order to stand out. You want something with fewer words, but that explains exactly what you do within the first sentence so that people know, oh, I should stop. They're not going to want to read about the 16 benefits that your solution provides, or like the quote from your customer and all that kind of stuff that people typically put on a booth. That doesn't help you to stand out. You need big, bright, bold colors. Now, if you're at the front of the hall, it's a little bit different. Maybe you don't have to go quite as bold because you have the benefit of location, but not thinking about that and just designing for the person coming to your booth is a mistake that I've seen a lot of people make in terms of trying to stand out. And then the last thing I'll say is the tchotchke, right? The giveaways. Using the wrong type of giveaway, or using one that, heaven forbid, is inappropriate. And not reading your audience right. Like, I've seen some people use, the showgirls. Like, that's just, in this day and age, it's just not a thing. Or having a draw that doesn't appeal to the audience. Like, if the exhibit hall is very small, having like a magician there is not really going to be that much helpful, right? Because the exhibit hall is small itself. The whole hall is going to have a problem attracting people. You standing out versus your next door neighbor isn't, there's better use of that money. So just being sort of, I'll call it situationally aware of where your booth is and what kind of exhibit hall you're in, that can really help dictate what some of these tactics really should be and the ones you really should avoid.
So, I mean, Colin's right. It depends on the size of the conference. So maybe you adjust, the response based on, is it a small user group versus, the big HIMSS Health Vive conferences, right? But I'll say from more of the large conference perspective, the top tactic I love to see is content in your booth. Like, some sort of session, speaker, panel, like that. And I love that because then you're not marketing, come and hear a sales pitch from us, right? It allows you to say, come and hear something that's really valuable. And that just changes what you can do to market for yours. And, Dell Technologies is the best at this. They taught me the principles you need to be able to do this right. You need proper sound so they can actually hear the people. You need a booth wrangler that's pulling in people, because once you get a crowd, then you get more people, and the booth wrangler can bring even more people, and you'll get lots of scan badges, and you get them in your booth, right? And then you just need someone interesting enough for people to want to come, right? So whether that's an influencer, that's why I like the panel. You can get multiple influencers, even a customer, etc. Leverage that, that actual piece of content in, to be able to say, hey, here's a real reason to come to our booth, rather than, hey, do you want to come hear a sales pitch? Like, does that ever work? I don't think so. We only go to booths because we know people, or otherwise we're walking by and there's some serendipity there. So yeah, I love the session, if you will. To Colin's point, you often can't get a session, and so create your own in the booth and make it an attraction that they want to come to, so that you can get the attention that you want. And then also, kind of similar to Colin's previous point, share it after the event, right? Whether you're sharing it in real time, whether you're sharing a blog post summary after, an article somewhere, that's another valuable thing as well.
I love the one that John just mentioned, the in booth content, if your booth can handle it, obviously is a great one. The one tactic that I go back to is one that I saw. It was a few years ago now, but it was probably the longest line and one of the best tactics I've ever seen. And that was that in-person t-shirt printing in the booth, right? So they had a t-shirt printer who would screen print a choice of 4 designs onto a choice of shirt. You could choose from 2 different colors of the shirt, and then the person would screen print whatever your design on it. And I got to tell you, the line was at least 40 minutes all the time for this booth. And smartly, the organization had salespeople engage with the people while they're standing in line, right? So as you were standing in line, waiting to get to the front to pick your t-shirt and design, the sales team that was there was talking to the people, just engaging them in conversation. I don't think they were being very salesy. They were just asking where you're from and how are you and what do you think, and well, which design are you going to choose and why that one, and so it was just nice. It was a great experience. I went through the line, and it was, and they didn't shun me as a fellow vendor. So that was really nice, and just to see that, like, it was such a draw. And as the days went on in this conference, more and more people came because the word had spread, and that the t-shirt was so cool, and this is a great way to get one. And anyway, that was probably the best tactic I've ever seen in terms of drawing people to a booth and then engaging them while they were there. So it wasn't just a come by, grab the t-shirt, and never talk to them again. The salespeople seemed very engaged in the conversation while they were waiting in line. So that would be my top one.